Hi, I'm Hannah Gabby, and I'm here to tell you the binary is bullshit.
The binary is bullshit. Oh, thank God. I also hate the computing language. Oh, you're not talking about that, are you? You're talking about the binary that is male and female, XY and XX. The binary that is required in order for our species to reproduce, and any deviations away from that binary results in abnormalities and defects. You know, defects like XXXY syndrome, which causes intellectual disability in boys and men, delays in their development, physical differences, and infertility, meaning inability to reproduce. What about defects like XXXX syndrome, a disorder that affects females born with 4 copies of the X chromosome instead of just 2? You know, the thing that can cause abnormal teeth, intellectual impairment, prominent eye folds, widely spaced eyes, and delays in their development, which includes things like gross or fine motor skills, language skills, social skills, or thinking skills. There's more, I just wanted to mention at least 2 to show you that the moment you start to deviate from simply XX or XY, you start ending up with genetic disorders that can impair one's quality of life. We call these conditions genetic disorders and abnormalities because they're not regular, they're not common. They are not beneficial, and they are not required for the continuation of our species. I'm not trying to say that people born with these conditions are lesser or that they deserve to be treated differently simply because they have different genetics. So don't even try with that bullcrap. I'm stating that cherry-picking abnormalities and mutations simply in order to argue against the binary that is XX and XY is disingenuous and asinine to say the least. But it's always something that people like this run to, and I just wanted to get that out of the way.
Sex typically refers to your biological traits.
There's your gonads, your genitalia, your internal sex characteristics, your hormone production, hormone response, and secondary sex characteristics.
Yes, hormone levels and hormone response, how your body uses said hormones and how it reacts to the presence of different concentrations of those hormones. You expect males, to have a higher concentration of testosterone in their blood than females, and you expect females to have a higher concentration of estrogen in their blood than males. This is why testosterone is called a male sex hormone and estrogen is called a female sex hormone. Females can still have testosterone in their blood, it's just not as high in concentration as males. And males can still have estrogen in their blood, it's just not as high in concentration as females.
Gender is about your identity, your expression, and it's often based on ideas about sex.
If that's what you want to claim it is, but realize that in stating that these 2 things are different, you need to keep them separate. You shouldn't use them interchangeably, but something tells me that you're the type of person that might do it when it suits you.
It's important that we really break down what are we talking about when we talk about sex and gender, and is there something called biological sex, and what does that mean?
You literally just defined both sex and gender, but now you're going to try and decide if sex exists despite the countless hours spent studying our species, the 2 different sexes, how hormones impact males and females, our chromosomes, chromosomal abnormalities, and on and on. You're going to try and argue against years and years of research. Oh God, this is going to be annoying. Fact, in a vast overwhelming number of cases, you're either male or female. It is not assigned at birth as some morons claim, it is identified at birth. Rare abnormalities in an individual's chromosomes do not constitute a new sex. Imagine a factory mass-producing guitars, and a machine incorrectly slices a hole in one of the guitars. That guitar is not some special brand new type of guitar, it is a guitar with a defect.
This idea that the body is either male or female is totally wrong, and I am living proof of that.
We know intersex people exist and break down this binary.
Again, a guitar with a hole in it is not a special brand new type of guitar. Abnormalities with someone's chromosomes, resulting in a whole host of negative effects up to literal inability to reproduce, is not a new sex.
We all have characteristics that are typically male and typically female, and it is really about political choices, social factors, ideological choices that we assign meaning to different parts of our bodies. So the meaning may be that the thing that most of us are taught, that if you have a vagina, you're a girl, or if you have a penis, you're a boy.
Okay, now you're straying into what you defined as gender, as you're talking about how one identifies and not their sex. Sex is sign. Simply because we assign labels to the classifications of the 2 sexes does not mean that those classifications and those labels are founded upon nothing but the factors you listed. Stop trying to intermix sex and gender, the things that you defined at the beginning of this video, as you literally define them as 2 separate things. We are taught that a vast majority of males have penises and that a vast majority of females have vaginas because it is observable reality.
But like many simple binaries, break down when you start to really get into the nitty-gritty.
No, they break down in the minds of simpletons when those simpletons attempt to tackle what they inherently don't wish to accept. You're tackling this not with scientific papers or overwhelming proof. You're going to rely on cherry-picked examples, emotions, and deceptively intermixing defined terms in order to try and convince people that you're right. If you were genuinely right, then you wouldn't even be having to make this video. You'd have an overwhelming scientific consensus behind you. You'd be relaxing on some couch somewhere, sipping a margarita and watching a freaking television show. When was the last time you heard of scientists being proven wrong about something that they have studied for decades? Were they proven wrong by a 7-minute YouTube video? No. No, they were not.
Over history, the location or the idea of what determined one's true sex shifted. 100 years ago, it used to be whether or not you had ovaries or testes. Then it shifted to what kinds of chromosomes that you had. But the body doesn't just have one place where we can sit there with a microscope or something else and say, hey, wait a second, this is really who you are, this is your true sex.
Yes, we do. It's called your chromosomes. The reason that the criteria for how we determine a person's sex has changed is because we as a species have become more advanced. We went from simply only being able to observe an individual's genitalia to being able to observe their literal genetics, what makes them what they are. You're trying to discredit modern science by stating that we were less advanced in the past. Is that the best you have? Is that genuinely the best you have? Because that's just pathetic.
In fact, who you are is who you say you are.
I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but no, a biological male will always be a biological male given the fact that we have no way to reasonably change your genetic makeup, and thus your sex. A biological female will always be a biological female. Those with genetic abnormalities are not a new sex. They are individuals with genetic abnormalities. Those with genetic abnormalities are not a new sex. Those with genetic abnormalities just have genetic abnormalities. You can try to change how you appear on the outside, but your genetics will not change. If you define intersex as conditions in which chromosomal sex is inconsistent with phenotypic sex, or in which the phenotype is not classifiable as either male or female, then the prevalence of those classifiable as intersex is about 0.018% of the population. I feel as though that definition is fair given that intersex individuals would have to be neither male nor female to actually be intersex. That's less than 2% of 1% of the population. Even if we're being super generous and timesing it by 100, then that's still less than 2% of the overall population. So yes, they're not that common.
Intersex people are individuals born with varying degrees of sex characteristics that don't fit the typical script of what it means to be male or female.
So you're looking purely at an individual's body rather than what makes up their body, their genetics. You're considering anyone with physical abnormalities to be intersex rather than those that we actually can't genetically classify as male or female? God damn, I'm just gonna go out and cut a hole in a guitar and claim that it's a new invention and sell it to you.
I identify as an intersex person.
I identify as rich and prosperous. That doesn't make it true.
I identify as an intersex woman.
I identify as Spartacus.
And we're not that rare. It's 1.7% of the population that's born like this.
Yes, if you include those that can actually be classified as male or female and with actual intersex people, then you get a staggering 1.7% of the population. And that's being the most generous anyone can possibly be. If you only look at those that fit neither male nor female classifications, based on genetics, then you get 0.018%.
It's as common as people with green eyes and redheads. Everybody knows somebody, but it's sometimes hard for the person to speak about it, or the person doesn't necessarily know it.
I remember when I first learned about intersex and how surprising it was to me. I was like, what is this? Why have I never heard about this? And we haven't heard about it because it's actually been stigmatized for a long time.
One thing a lot of people in the intersex community talk about are medically unnecessary surgeries that are forced upon intersex children to make them fit into these boxes of male or female.
The parents do so presumably in hopes of allowing the kids to have a normal life. But if you're against medically unnecessary genital mutilation being performed on children, then hey, we actually agree on something.
I have gone through surgeries that have really stuck with me through my whole life and affected a lot of different parts of my life just so that I can fit into this box of female.
Were you born with genetics that can reasonably be classified as female? Congrats, you're female. Were you born with genetics that can reasonably be classified as female, but you had a few defects? Congrats, you're still female. You just had a few defects.
It's possible to be both intersex and transgender, but it's really important to understand that they are not the same.
According to the definitions in this video, yes, they are not.
It's more like a Venn diagram. While intersex people are often born with a mix of what science considers male and female biological characteristics, trans people are often born into a binary gender and then realize later in life that whatever their assigned gender was isn't how they actually want to live, isn't who they actually are.
They can identify however the hell they wish, but it doesn't change their genetics, nor does it magically sprout a new sex into existence.
I was born with XY chromosomes, and my gender at birth was female.
If you define gender as how you identify, then that's absolute bullshit, because you were an incapable infant, not even able to comprehend what the hell sex or gender was. Are you transsexual?
We tend to think that chromosomes for women should only ever be XX, but there are women that have XY chromosomes.
Are we going into a trans discussion? Why are you using women instead of just females? Why are you making this a far more muddied and confusing conversation than it needs to be? It sounds like you're just trying to use the existence of trans individuals in order to justify your talking points about intersex people.
Chromosomes are not the sole determinant of your sex or your gender.
Actually, chromosomes are the sole determinant of your sex. Even if you believe that intersex people are a staggering 1.7% of the population, their body and sex is still determined by their chromosomes. Even if they were born with genetic defects, their chromosomes are still the culprit. Even if you want to be loosey-goosey and say that gender is how you identify, that does not change that sex is static. You will, and I'm being 100% genuine, never change whether or not you're a biological male or a biological female. I don't give a fuck how you identify, gender-wise, so long as you're not the type of jackass to infringe on my free speech. I genuinely could not care less how the fuck you identify, but your genetics are set in stone whether you like it or not.
When I say I'm a woman, I don't just mean that I identify as a woman. I mean that my biology is the biology of a woman, regardless of whether or not doctors agree.
You know what? Fuck it, I'm done. This fucker just stated that they don't care whether or not doctors, people that have spent at least 8 years of their lives studying this in universities and have the means to look at the genetic makeup of an individual's body, they don't care if doctors have evidence to the contrary, apparently, because how this fuck identifies somehow trumps reality. Individuals like this will look at a naturally born boy with XY chromosomes and claim that that boy is a female the moment that that boy grows up and claims to be one. They will continue to be disingenuous by conflating sex and gender in an effort to undermine the notion of sex. They will happily care more about feelings than observable reality, making claim after claim after claim about how science supports their side without ever providing a fucking shred of evidence. They are disingenuous liars. To the people of Teen Vogue, you have to prove your claims. I don't have to disprove them. Start putting some links in the description of your videos or go the fuck away.